evening, everybody. It's I, Nick, Pennsylvania, here as I always am with my good friend Brendan Bond. Good evening, Brendan.
Good evening, Nick.
And I was just saying, not only is procedure and consistency important, but also this is the first time we have ever recorded like this. We are actually just sitting at your dining room table, and I think the last time we recorded in person was with the field recorder in what became kind of the lost episode because there was so many issues with the audio. There was another time we sat in your car with the field recorder, but now we are actually just sitting here with an old figure 8 mic at the dining room table, and I don't think we have ever done the most simple thing, which is this one microphone operation.
Yeah, this is the most simple way to do things, and
it's eluded us for all these years.
It has. I'm not sure why. So we'll need to do more of this now, especially. Well, it'll be nice too once I have like my actual studio space set up and everything.
Yeah,
where we can sit down properly.
Well, in the words of Tina Turner, we don't do things nice and easy. But you have been on the road and you drove through a historical place, and you said, "Well, by gosh, by jingo, oh, by gee, there must be some spooky stories." So I think we're going to go to the classic. We are recording this right before Halloween.
Yes.
The kind of classic bread and butter. So where were you? And what did you see there?
So I was traveling out across the Commonwealth over into our the sister state of New Jersey, and for a wedding last weekend. And while I was coming back, we took the Schuylkill Parkway Expressway there, which takes you right past Valley Forge, right outside of Philadelphia, between Philadelphia proper and Phoenixville, which is somewhere I've never been.
If you get to King of Prussia, you've gone too far.
Yeah, which King of Prussia is apparently a big mall and nothing else.
It is one of the largest malls. There were other things there. I have a funny story about that, and I'll tell you that later.
Okay, sounds good. But I had never been to Valley Forge, and I wish I would have had time to stop. But as we were kind of sitting on the road in traffic, I was thinking to myself, there's got to be some ghosts there. There has to be some good Valley Forge ghosts out there. So as I was sitting in traffic, I was not driving. I was a passenger at this point, and I was like, "Oh, let me do some preliminary research," And so I started kind of poking around. I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's definitely some ghosts in Valley Forge."
Yeah, you figure.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that for those of you who aren't in the United States might not be as familiar with this. So Valley Forge was where there was a large not the Army of the Potomac, but George Washington's army. During the Revolutionary War, camped there over the one winter. And I think it was something like 14,000.
Yeah, and it was the nadir of the war. Really, as far as the American side go, the colonies against the Crown of England go, that was about as bad as it got. And I think that winter culminated that December with... I don't know if the crossing of the Delaware was before this winter, but it's one of those really significant moments in the American Revolution.
Yeah, and you think it's an encampment over the winter. I'm sure that sucked. How bad could that be? Apparently, it could be pretty bad.
Eating shoe leather bad.
Yeah, it was bad. There was a lot of logistical issues, and thousands of American soldiers died. I think 2,000 or 3,000. Which out of an army of 12 to 14 is a lot. Wasn't great, and it's a lot of people that were stationed in one area for months and months. So it was kind of a bad situation, which when we talk about ghost stories a lot, makes you think, oh, this is kind of primed, right?
Right. Well, and of course too, because as Americans, we associate the American Revolution kind of as the kickoff point of us as a nation, even though, of course, there were colonies and colonists long before then and for thousands of years prior. I mean, we are not too far from, I think, one of the oldest known human inhabitants the world over down in Washington County. But just the same, when we think of kind of modern people, we kind of associate the American Revolution because it's kind of the trappings of everything. We filter everything through that.
Right, we do. Yeah, absolutely. I think the late 1700s, especially, is such a romanticized time for us.
For those very reasons.
For those exact reasons.
Yeah.
And I think because you have a lot of our history and culture seemingly solidifying in that time, I think there is a lot of folklore associated with it. And when we think of when we think of something that is like old and haunted, that's like where a lot of that starts. Especially out on that side of the Commonwealth and that side of the country.
Well, when you're constantly looking back at the birth of a thing, I mean, we were born not long after the bicentennial,
right?
And there was a big fervor around that time, and so yeah, of course, when you look to the beginnings, it's like when you drive by the house you grew up in. You have a lot of emotion, and
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. I like that. So whenever you think of like such an important time, and you think of like if there is anything to people co-creating or people putting energy into a place, therefore it being haunted, this is a prime location for it for a lot of reasons. Not only because of the things that happened to those poor soldiers and people that were there at the time, but it's a place that since that happened, people have been going to and thinking about it. Very much like Gettysburg and very much like other places that had these huge tragedies that people continually just pump time and energy and attention and focus into. So when I started looking into Valley Forge here, at first I found the kind of things you would expect. So without having done any research on your end of this, Nick, you can probably guess some of the first things we're going to talk about here. So one is just the idea of ghostly soldiers being seen. Again, parallels to Gettysburg. One of the things that I thought was interesting when looking at some of these stories that folks have, now most of them are just people saying like, oh, people see soldiers, Now,
are they seeing them close up? Are they seeing like vague outlines, shadows?
So a lot of the stories that I came across seem to be really clear apparitions.
Okay.
But they're clear apparitions that people say are specifically happening at dusk and dawn, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I mean, one, just from like a symbolic standpoint, you have that it is literally the liminal time of day,
Right.
So it makes it a little just like spookier in that sense.
But it's not the apparition because, we see the lights, we see the shadows, but then there's also you guys have really dedicated reenactors around here. So there's stories.
Yeah,
you get a lot.
There were a few of those. The ones that I thought were most interesting, though, there was one former. I'm not sure if it was a ranger, just employee that I was able to find, mentioned that on a few occasions he heard stories of people that saw ghosts that looked like they were standing guard, which is not common, but a story they've heard, they hear a lot around some of the buildings that are historic on like the campus of this park. But the one employee was saying that he had a report of people seeing ghosts look like they were standing
watch,
but at a place that was to the east of Washington's headquarters, which is the Isaac Potts house, which we'll talk about a little bit later. That they were wondering like why these reenactors would be standing in the middle of a field, basically. And the guy didn't say anything at the time, but he said there used to be a structure there. So not saying that like it couldn't have just been reenactors standing there, but he didn't think it was. And he's like, if there is anything to residual hauntings,
there you are.
Yeah. So I mean, now granted, like, is that story true or not? Who knows? But I do think if there are like ghost sentries. Because you hear that at other forts, like you hear that, especially what's the one?
I've heard it when I up in Canada. I remember hearing it at Fort McHenry.
I was saying Fort McHenry. Is that the one that's at Niagara?
I can't remember exactly where Fort McHenry is at right now.
But that might be the one because I've heard of that too, and also the one down in there's a famous fort in Florida.
I think Fort McHenry's north of the Niagara area.
It's further up.
I remember when I was up there, it was when we were up in Quebec. Mm-hmm. So I could be wrong. Okay. I could be wrong.
But yeah, there was
look it up.
Yeah, but there was one famous fort down in Florida. I'd have to look it up as well. That has like a lot of like ghostly sentries.
You're talking about the seashell one in St. Augustine. Yeah,
St. Augustine, yes.
Yeah, there are actually two forts there. There's the big one in St. Augustine proper, but then as you go down the intercoastal, there's a smaller outpost, which was, I think, just as interesting. It was really...
I've never been there, so...
I've been to both of those forts. Very cool.
Oh, interesting. We should do We should do St. Augustine Because I've heard that apparently that town is haunted as hell. So
well, it's again, you go back, that's it. But it's not any older than a lot of things. It's just that's that European settlement.
That's true. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Correct.
I must be saying something wrong. I think it's Fort Henry because McHenry is in Baltimore, Maryland. So I'm going to look up Fort Henry right quick. Fort Henry is in Kingston, Ontario.
Okay, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I just also like the idea of ghostly sentries. Like, again, like in if people's intent has anything to do with this, you can imagine, folks who were living. Oh yeah, that's in the spot.
Yeah, it's right in between Ottawa and Toronto.
Yeah, that makes sense. But if there is anything to people like putting themselves into something, I imagine standing guard at a place like this at a time like that would have had a lot of really intense and just important feelings associated with it. So
well, when you think about the heightened emotion, like again, a lot of people are starving around you. Everybody's feeling pretty rough. Like you're in the middle of a skirmish or a war.
Yeah.
And again, at a really ugly time too. Like we were talking lead bullets. When a bullet would hit you, it was soft enough that it hit a bone and your whole bone would shatter.
Right.
Like that's just horrifying.
Yeah. And
so I just imagine you're sitting up at night, and that's a strong motivation to keep on.
Right. Exactly. Seriously. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. There is stories also. This is like a little on the more not eccentric, but just a little more exaggerated maybe. Is
fantastical.
Fantastical. Maybe. Yeah. It's just because again, it's something I couldn't find any actual firsthand accounts of, but there's this Muhlenberg Brigade huts that are on the grounds. That there is this apparent story of a drummer boy who was like in one of the brigades that was like a drummer that died, and apparently you can still hear him drumming, kind of thing. Okay, which is a cool idea. Again, the picture that paints of like a foggy morning at this battlefield, or this camp, and hearing faint drums from a ghost child.
Well, and you know what? Funny enough, I remember when we were talking about Fort Ligonier with my friend Chris. Yeah, not Chris that was on last time, but another guy. If you go back to his Fort Ligonier stuff, he spoke specifically about phantom drums, and I think he said that he had heard them.
He had, yeah.
Yeah, you would be out in the woods, and he described it as, the tribal drums and whatnot. So again, there is
creepy. I don't know why that gets me so bad. Like,
well, I think we've talked about any kind of musical sound too, because I remember when we were on with Christian of Hemlock Spellbenders.
Yep. All the bull stuff.
And talking about hearing the violin sound, and of course, violin sound. Part of why the violin is as attractive as it is because it is very much like the voice. Yeah. So he's talked about like you could definitely mistake some birds for violin, but the bottom line is there is a whole thing of instruments. Drums like the oldest thing too. Yeah. So
did I tell you the only weird thing that's happened here at this house so far?
No.
Okay, so this is live. You're hearing this for the first time then.
Okay.
This was I guess Monday night. So this is fresh. I was sitting here working on something. I was editing photos, and I swear I heard whistling coming from downstairs. Like I can't whistle, so I can't even like tell you how it. I can't like replicate it, but it sounded like broken pieces of like someone like whistling like a tune. Like it wasn't like you'd hear like a whole 4 bars. Yeah. But it's like pop 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 pop. Well,
your water heater is down there. I mean,
so I was sitting. It was loud enough and clear enough that I was like, "What the hell am I hearing?" Yeah. So I thought it was my neighbor because he takes his dog for the walk in the evening and everything. So I was like, "Oh, maybe he's whistling at Willow." So I go downstairs, look around, go outside. He's not outside. And I come back up, and a few minutes later, I hear a similar thing. It's not the same thing, but it's similar. I can't find where it's coming from. I turn all my Blink cameras on, inside and out, and try sitting here and listening to see if I can, like...
Yeah, if it was captured.
And it wasn't. I couldn't hear it on there. But it was just weird, and I think the fact it didn't feel creepy, which was good, but there's something about it being musical that was like, okay, even if this is like a super spooky ghost, how bad can it be?
Right.
It's a fellow music lover, so like.
Well, and whistling tends to be less ominous than drums in the woods.
Right, it does, yeah. Like if I would have heard drumming
coming from your basement, that would have been.
I would not have. Yeah. God, I would have reacted much differently.
Well, you told me that you found an old article or something like that about these stories. I'm really curious to hear that because, one, anytime we pull up an old periodical, it's just interesting to delve into the history of that. It's interesting for us to kind of parse to, like, are they sensationalizing this? Because I cannot stress enough, we have read some 18th century, we've recorded some 18th century periodicals with the Dr. Pennsylvania thing. And it is just really, we talk about native advertising today. They got buck wild with that stuff back then.
I think you're going to like this one because the thing I came across, this is an 1883 article out of the Philadelphia Record.
Okay.
And it was also a similar, a shorter one was printed in the Somerset Herald. We were just talking about Bedford, which is between there and Somerset. So this one takes place, where is it? The Port Kennedy Railroad Station? Yeah, the Port Kennedy Railroad Station, which is on the battlefield. It's like in the southeast edge, but it's on the battlefield.
Okay.
So this is a really cool story. It is not like Revolutionary War related, but I think it's interesting that it's still the same piece of land, And again, when I find these stories, it's like we kind of have to read them. So like I said, this is from the Philadelphia Record in 1883. A ghost who looks big enough and is presumably old enough to know better spends his evenings on the tracks of the Reading Railroad just below Port Kennedy Station, scaring the life out of engineers and trainmen who may happen to pass. He has been shot at twice, has been run over several times nightly, and has been struck on the head with a bludgeon once. This kind of thing doesn't disturb him, however, for he swallows the bullets without fear of indigestion and plays roly-poly with the heavy car wheels as they are crushing and mangling his intangible body. Well,
this is just good writing. Let's just start it. Like, this author clearly isn't taking this very seriously, and I respect that.
I just love this.
Playing roly-poly.
Playing roly-poly. We need to bring that term back.
Not just for the bug.
10 years ago, a vagrant was run over just near the spot, which is now haunted under circumstances which implied negligence on the part of the men in charge of the locomotive. Immediately, ghosts began to make their appearance by the dozen until the fall of 1880, after which time it was thought that their wrath was appeased, as they came no more. On Christmas night, however, at Valley Forge.
Spooky ghost stories.
Boy, yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt the talking right now, but I'm just trying to think of how could the people running the train be negligent and it takes a lot to stop a train.
That's why they say that. Exactly. On Christmas night, however, an apparition of unusual size, which we don't hear very often.
No.
Usual size attacked the 9 o'clock freight train, which is managed by engineer Charles Welch. This was a signal for the general onslaught, and every evening since, phantoms have filtered across the lines and otherwise made themselves felt in consequence. A great many of the trains which leave Callowhill Hill Street Depot after dark are loaded with missiles and weapons for use against bogies wherever they may be found at large. Brakeman George Nelson on the train, which leaves Philadelphia at 7:45 in the evening, claims to have had a thrilling experience with a ghost. He ran away with his cap. On New Year's night, he was standing in the front platform of the first car to get a whiff of fresh air with the train steaming 35 miles an hour. When within 50 yards of the usual spot, the headlights' rays pierced the darkness, rested on what seemed to be the figure of a man standing out in bold relief, although it could not have been more than a few seconds before the train reached the time seemed prolonged to minutes. Nelson excitingly seized the bell rope, pulled it violently, and in addition, shrieked out to the engineer to pull up. Although he laid hold of the cord at once, He says that it was not until the apparition was past that the gong struck. I assume he means like something to like signal the engineer to stop the train kind of thing. Not like a gong like we think of. I was like, that'd be a horrible implement. If you try,
it wouldn't be the most efficient.
It would not be the most efficient way to do something. Gradually, the train neared the person who seemed to be standing with one of his hands shading his face and the other pointing to the throbbing engine, straining to mow him down. Throbbing engine. There was
sounds like a euphemism here.
There was a sudden blankness, a cold blast of air which carried off his hat, and Nelson did not know what happened till the conductor opened the door and told him he would catch cold. He was not certain of what he had seen was not flesh and blood. On the next night, he armed himself with a large piece of iron, but the ghost was a wily one and didn't come. On the succeeding evening, however, he had a clean shot at it, and a passenger on the train who had been told of the bogey joined him and fired 2 barrels of a revolver in its face, all without effect.
Okay.
That doesn't seem like a great idea, does it?
Well, I'm curious. It's like bogey, there's a boogie. Is it one? Are they clearly this article is claiming that this is some sort of specter.
It's happening continually.
Right. Now, I can't imagine that the lore has changed that dramatically from the late 19th century that when this man opened fire on it, the train guy had already said he didn't think it was anything but flesh and blood.
Right.
The guy who opened 2 barrels at it. Well, when you're getting a train, this is just 1 barrel is probably sufficient. Like, what were you thinking you were going on your commute? I'm assuming he figured this was flesh and blood, and then he obviously wasn't really so concerned about, there are laws against manslaughter.
Yeah, you shouldn't be shooting people.
Cold-blooded murder, and 2 barrels to the face.
Yeah, that's really...
That, or he knew it was a ghost and wanted the novelty of seeing
if it would do anything.
I don't know.
That's what I'm... Yeah, it's a weird situation. He said, but this
is great writing.
It is,
I feel like it's just drumming up like a legend, basically. But go on.
It is. I think in a lot of ways it is. It says the most interesting experience, however, was reserved for engineer Charles Welch, who has been mentioned as having heralded the ghost's first appearance this season. We mentioned earlier. On last Saturday night, he spied it as usual ahead. But it looked so different from what it did on the previous occasion that he thought it was a real individual and not an artificial one. In a few seconds, with great presence of mind, he had the brakes down, the steam whistle blowing, and the bell ringing. He shuddered precipitously as the train slid over the figure and then came to a dead stop. He had not sufficient notice to stop the train in time. "We've killed someone, Jim," said Welch sorrowfully, and the conductor said, "All we had better go back and pick up the pieces." A mournful procession proceeded to hunt for the required items, but not a scrap they could find. Welch at once remembered about the ghost, and the train sped on. So we've heard that before with other people who say they think I've heard this on Jim. We've heard this on Jim Harold's Campfire and other people telling stories where someone thinks they hit a real person.
Well,
and it's.
I know Emily had a story of there was a ghost dog in the trailer park she had grown up in, and there was many stories about people driving through and thinking they'd hit a dog and not being any dog. But
and how traumatic must that be?
One of the things I think that I have to be critical of this writer about is there's all this talk about how unusual size. There's no real description.
They don't give like 9 feet tall,
right?
Because it'd be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool.
Like we can all agree. Big ghosts are cooler.
To be scarier, even.
Right. See, I just thought that was interesting. It's like, what are the odds you find a weird story like that on the grounds of the camp, but it is even associated with the.
I would like to see other, those old papers. They would always have like the 2-3 paragraph stories in the little columns and everything.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to see the culmination of those little stories if they're there. Otherwise, I'm to believe that this is a tale people have talked about in the area. This writer, again, clearly is having some fun with it, which I respect. And I don't know how seriously I should take the accounts that are documented in the story you just read. I'm going to take them as it's kind of a fun, spooky ghost story.
Right.
I don't think they were really necessarily documenting anything that happened.
That's possible. Yeah.
But, I mean, trains, if you read 19th century newspapers, there is so much conversation about what's going on with trains, and I remember hearing something recently on like maybe a more perfect union thing, because there have been with they talk about the a train conductor that is a conductor for like a full career will hit at least 2 people.
Jeez.
Yeah, think about that.
I don't like those odds.
Don't quote me on that, but I remember hearing that and being like, wow. Now I'm thinking too, in the 19th century,
it was probably different. Yeah,
it was probably higher.
Probably higher back then, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
What with Snidely Whiplash, always tying people to.
Right. Oh my gosh. But so kind of back in the other direction, one of the other things I want to talk about, because I don't think we've actually talked about this character. I knew this person who we're going to mention here was associated with the revolution, obviously. But I didn't know that his ghost, we've talked about like famous people's ghosts being seen up. So at Valley Forge, one of the many places that Mad Anthony Wayne.
Yeah, and I know we have mentioned him in the past. I think in one of our conversations with our friend Brian, who was recently on again after a long hiatus, because there is one of the country highways out here is also known as Mad Anthony Wayne Highway, because he's been exhumed and his body's been moved on a couple of occasions.
I want to tell the story real quick. Because it is one of those stories where, because like when we get to the moving the body, it doesn't sound real. But it is.
It definitely has been documented.
Yeah, this is like this. I promise everybody.
Incredibly documented.
Yeah, I promise everyone. This is a real. What we're telling you now is absolutely real. So people call him Mad Anthony Wayne, but really it was General Anthony Wayne.
Right. You wouldn't call him mad to his face.
You wouldn't call him mad to his face. Celebrated Revolutionary War hero. Fiery temper. Yeah, probably wasn't a fun dude, but it was important to the war effort. You know? And certainly important to history. But so after the Revolutionary War and everything, he continued to serve in the Continental Army. And he actually died at Presque Isle, Fort Presque Isle.
Right up in Erie, PA.
On December 15th, 1796. According to his wishes, he was simply just buried in a pine coffin at the blockhouse up there.
Yeah.
Not a lot of pomp and circumstance, which was kind of his MO. Which is that's what he asked for. So, but now what ended up happening was in 1809, his family decided to take his body from the blockhouse at Presque Isle to St. David's Church Cemetery, which is in Radnor Township, which is very close to Valley Forge. What they did was his son Isaac Wayne came up to Presque Isle, and they exhumed the body in the coffin and everything. And his body was remarkably well preserved. So some people think that it's like when people talk about like grave soap, like it might have been something like that. I don't think anyone thinks it's like a paranormal thing, like a saint, like he's not quote unquote remarkably preserved.
Saint Germain and everything.
Yeah, like he's not like preserved in that sense, but. Like basically his son got there and was like, well, I wasn't ready to take a whole body back home. I shouldn't say it like that. But like, can you imagine expecting to find some bones and then being like, oh, this is a whole corpse.
Right. This is going to be more weight than I had accounted for.
This is a bigger deal than what I anticipated.
Right.
So apparently there was a local physician named Dr. James Wallace. So what they decided to do, this is the crazy part. So what they decided to do was put his body, his remarkably preserved body, in a giant cauldron and boil him.
Yeah.
Render all the fat out.
Listen, we're expediting the process. What should have occurred already naturally.
I get that. But I just I don't know. I have such a hard. This is.
Well, I want to put a pin in that for a sec, because I'm sure you've heard, to cremate a person takes a lot of BTUs. Well, they're talking about water cremation now, and I know in Allegheny County they're making strides to making that available. So
really,
So I'm thinking this man, this Wallace, actually a revolutionary figure in his own right.
Okay. You know what? Maybe
when it comes to death rights,
maybe he's ahead of his time.
The bottom line is though they did boil the body,
and they kept. The floaty bits.
Right. They skimmed those from the top.
They skimmed those from the top and put those back in the blockhouse.
That's the cream.
Yeah, they took the cream of the cream, and put it back in the blockhouse. And this is this guy's dad. Like, I just, like, it sounds bonkers to me. So they take the floaty bits, put them in the blockhouse.
Where they remain to this day.
Where they're still there. Then they take the bones and they put them on a wagon and they take them back to...
And it must have been something of a rickety wagon.
Apparently.
And not really well secured bones.
You would think they'd close the box.
In fairness, packing tape hadn't been invented yet.
There was no packing tape, duct tape. But so they get...
There was no ducks even.
Yeah, again, I know I'm like... I sound exasperated right now because I am. Because it's one of those stories every time...
You were so disappointed in these people.
I am. Yeah, like you shouldn't treat bodies like this. So they get the whole way back to Valley Forge, basically. And they go to inter him in this St. David's Church cemetery. And they're like, whoops-a-daisy. There's definitely bones missing.
Yeah.
Like, this is not all of them.
And so the highway that I mentioned earlier, that is in large swaths known as the Mad Anthony Highway, or Route 322, is roughly the trail, the road that they took, and little bits of Anthony are sprinkled along the routes.
Yeah, which is just like for like a Revolutionary War like hero, you know, like for all intents and purposes. Yeah, it's just like... So that's like the not paranormal weird part.
You know, the funny thing though is, I think maybe I'm wrong. I get the impression that he would have liked that.
Maybe he would have. Yeah,
my mom jokes like when she dies, we cremate her, we're to sprinkle her around all the ice rinks of North America because she spent so much time in them.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
between my sister and I playing ice hockey.
I'm all for people spreading remains and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a problem, but it just I don't know. If someone's wishes are one thing, and that's a serious deviation from...
Well, they've already violated his wishes by exhuming him the first time.
Yeah, and then boiling him, and then like whoops-a-daisy, your femur is now in Bedford. Yeah, you know, like
you got a couple.
The rest of you is here. Like, there's a Jawbones in New Kensington. Like, you know. I don't know. But so I say all that because apparently Mad Anthony Wayne's ghost is seen on a horse, very specifically, in Valley Forge.
Yeah.
Which again is a pretty cool like visual to like imagine. But
don't tell me he's riding up and down the road looking for his teeth or something.
They say it looks like he's looking for something. Like he looks.
It was going so good. Maybe it looks like he's looking to rally these troops here.
Right. Yeah. It's like one of those like too good to be true kind of ghost stories in my sense. But
it's the ghost story that begged to be created.
Right.
Like, that is that. You know what? When we talked with our friend Chris the other week, and I said that there were tropes like you know, people have unfinished business or something. I think a subset of that, which maybe still exists, but they're more of like the child ghost stories. Yeah. They're looking for a body part.
Or confused.
The Headless Horseman.
Yeah.
Or things like that.
That's
or Big Toe. I think about from the Alvin Schwartz collection.
Yeah, that is a good point, I think. Because it's like the idea, like if there is anything to like an unrestful spirit. Yeah. Like in a lot of cultures, people think like, oh yeah, like the body should be at least whole. Like if it's not whole, that's a problem. You know. So
I think that is kind of an argument of dimension, though.
Oh, it totally is.
We're flaking off little bits of us everywhere we go.
Oh, no, it absolutely is. It's more of a symbolic thing.
No, I get it.
Because that's the thing is, I think in this case, if his ghost is unrestful, let's say hypothetically, Mad Anthony Wayne ghost is unrestful, it probably isn't because he is physically his body is not all together, but it's symbolically that his wishes were not respected.
And I just think, you know, have you ever had anything removed, like in a surgery or anything? Oh, yeah. Did you keep it for a while?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, okay. Well, that kind of shoots that idea. Because I remember I had to have this tooth here removed.
Oh, okay.
I kept that tooth for a while.
Oh, see, I would have done that.
And, okay, so you would have done that. I would have done that. And then after a while, I'm like, this is gross. Why am I doing But I think so there is like a part of us that thinks like, oh,
that's true.
We have to keep ourselves together. I remember there's an old joke that I wish I could do in Golden Girls. I wish it was Golden Girls. And she's like, oh, this is Dale, some boyfriend. And she's like, he still has all his own teeth. And then he takes out a jar and shakes it.
Talk about like, wow. That either is going to draw people towards you really quickly, or it's like, you know what? Okay, I guess we're done here.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Howard Hughes here has said enough, frankly.
Oh, that's wild. But yeah, so like I'm sitting there on the Schuylkill, expressway, reading these stories and everything as we're passing by Valley Forge. I mean, it made me really, really sad I wasn't able to stop and look around, because I would have loved to have gone and talked to some of the rangers and everything.
Sure. I was going to ask you, is like sitting in traffic reading those stories make you wish you had stopped more or less?
Right, at that point, right, yeah. I wish I had more time there. I would like to go back. So, like I said, it's a park I've never been to, but has some really cool history, and I'm now excited to know that there's some spooky history there, too.
Yeah.